So Argentina recently elected their new president, Javier Milei, who's not actually Hogwarts' new professor against the dark arts, but he is about to make a lot of things from the government disappear.
Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera.
Javier's promise is to take a chainsaw to government spending and cut virtually everything. And in some cases, he brings a literal chainsaw to his rallies as a symbol, and he's giving the people of Argentina a lot of hope that he can bring the economy back from the brink of collapse. But some parts of the media are calling him a libertarian who's about to turn the Argentinian economy upside down with his radical plan by adopting the US dollar and ultimately putting an end to their central bank. So the question is, why is Argentina's economy so important, and how will it potentially affect the US dollar? So let me explain. Argentina is the world's second biggest Latin American country. It plays a huge role in the global economy and the US dollar. For example, out of the 2 trillion physical US dollars in total circulation, Argentina holds the second highest amount, roughly 10% of all the US dollars in the world. And their economy has been in trouble for a long time with decades of high inflation, government spending on social and welfare programs, and extremely high rates of poverty of up to 40%. So to solve all this, Argentina elected a new president who's a right-leaning libertarian who promises to cut government spending, to ditch the Argentinian peso, and adopt the US dollar as their standard. And this will have huge consequences on the country and potentially the US dollar. So with that said, let me explain exactly what is going on, and let's get into it. Hi, my name is Andrei Jikh. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay Milei. So let me start with Argentina's problems, how Javier plans to fix them and why everyone is so excited, and then how it will potentially affect the US dollar. But first, you know how everyone was worried about US inflation reaching 9.1% in June of 2022? Well, imagine living in a country where inflation is over 140%. That means the price of stuff more than doubles in just a year. And the people of Argentina have found some creative ways to deal with it. People go shopping, for example, only once a month. They'll buy wholesale, which also means a lot of things might be out of stock, driving the prices higher. But whatever is in stock, people will buy on credit and pay it off next month, hoping that inflation would lower the value of their debt. Sounds confusing, but for example, let's say I borrowed 100 pesos here. Hopefully, at the end of 30 days, this 100 pesos would be worth half as much, making it easier for me to pay off my debt. Now that's only true though if I was to take my savings and put it into something stable that went up against the peso. And that's where the power of magic and the US dollar comes in. I need tape.
Argentines save in dollars because saving in local currency in a local bank has been a recipe for disasters.
So people convert their pesos into dollars so they can hold more value. But there's a bunch of problems even if you try that. The main problem is that there's a legal limit of converting up to only $200 a month. And because of fees, it can eat away as much as 80% of the money people try to convert. Official exchange rates are 360 pesos to $1, but the unofficial rate in the black market, if you want to convert more money, is up to 1,000 pesos for every dollar. So you can quickly see how trying to escape this kind of inflation becomes almost impossible, which is why almost half of the people in Argentina live in poverty. And it wasn't always like this. Believe it or not, Argentina was the 10th richest country in the world at one point, but its downfall started in part thanks to something called Peronism.
Once one of the richest countries in the world, there are many reasons behind Argentina's decline, including the legacy of this man, Juan Domingo Perón, elected president in 1946.
He came to power after having been inspired by Mussolini's fascist Italy. Basically, what he took from fascism was a strong state that's very intrusive, a strong emphasis on nationalism.
So Argentina combined socialism and nationalism to create a very powerful government. And the way it works is this. Socialism is the belief that it's the government's job to make stuff, to create products, to drill for oil, to educate people. And the profits and all the interests are then owned by the public and by extension the government, which is elected by the people. And by doing that, the hope is that the money will be sort of split evenly among the population. Those are some of the ideas behind socialism. So they took that idea, they combined it with nationalism. This one's easy to remember because it sounds like the word nation, and it's a strong belief in your own nation. Your country comes first. It's very patriotic, and it's this belief that our interests have to be aligned with the government's interests. The government can do no wrong, guys. Let's get together. And nationalism, what it eventually leads to in practical economic terms, is an isolated economy that doesn't really compete with the rest of the world. In a globalized economy, we actually compete with other countries and other people's jobs and incomes. That's why the US exports a lot of our jobs overseas, because other countries and other people can do them cheaper. But in a nationalistic approach, we protect and isolate the economy. Now, the good trait of nationalism is that it can unite a country under one purpose, which is sometimes good. Other times, though, the toxic trait of nationalism is that it can sometimes create a government that becomes the #1 employer. It's the government that gives all the jobs to people.
Of the 13 million people in formal employment in Argentina, over a third of them are employed by the state itself.
A lot of spending goes on paying salaries and pensions. You actually wanted to go on things like investments, technology, infrastructure, helping the poor, rather than paying public wages.
So the government becomes bigger and more bloated, it creates strong labor unions to protect its employees, and to keep everyone happy, it pays for their incomes and subsidizes their retirement. And if you think about it, on paper, those sound like great ideas. Those are the ideas that get people elected. But like we just saw with Argentina, they learned nothing comes for free, because when you combine all those ideas with a government that mismanages money, it can lead to corruption and very bad economic outcomes.
The emphasis on national sovereignty led to kind of the coddling of workers by protecting them from foreign competition that has shut itself off from international trade.
Eventually, all these economic policies led to subsidies. Now, a subsidy is just the government giving away free money to make things cheaper, which also sounds like a great idea. And one example in Argentina's case is their energy subsidy, and here's what it led to.
The average European spends around $40 a month on electricity. The average Argentine spends $5, 8 times less. In 2022 alone, this cost the government $12.5 billion, around 2% of Argentina's GDP.
Of course, that only works if the government makes a lot of money. And unfortunately for Argentina, they've been in a deficit for a long time. Meaning they've been spending a lot more money than they've been making. And they've given away so much money that they had to resort to printing more, which led to more inflation or borrowing from the IMF.
Argentina has been running a fiscal deficit for the last 13 years.
Today, Argentina's debt to the IMF is more than double that of Egypt, the second highest borrower. All told, Argentina holds almost a third of all of the IMF's total lending.
And one of the biggest criticisms of using the IMF to borrow money is that it just allows Argentina's broken policies to continue without ever teaching it a lesson, which is also why Argentina has defaulted on its debt 9 times now. It's sort of like if your kids come to you for money and they always keep on spending it, they'll never learn if you're always there to give them more. So for all those reasons, Argentina wanted to elect someone who would come in and shake things up, and that's where Javier Milei comes in. He got 56% of the country's votes, which is the most of any candidate since 1983. He even cloned his dogs, and he has a dog that he named after my favorite economist, Milton Friedman, which the nerd in me loves because, believe it or not, Milton Friedman predicted Bitcoin 10 years before it happened in 1999.
So that I think that the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash, a method whereby on the internet you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A.
So Javier has been called a couple of economic names that I want to help explain. I've never talked about this stuff because I feel like it would put people to sleep, but if you've made it this far into the video, you're in too deep. Now, the first name that he's called is a libertarian, and that's someone who believes that a society should be able to live freely without the government telling them what to do. Libertarians believe in individual freedom, a limited government, the rule of law, a free market, property rights, and self-ownership. So basically, he believes that you should be in charge of your entire life, and that government should have a very limited responsibility, maybe to the justice system like the courts and the police, but the rest should be left up to you and the institutions, which is why you've probably seen a video of him removing a bunch of stuff from the government in a video that made him worldwide famous. Javier also refers to himself as an anarcho-capitalist. It's a hard word to pronounce, but it's something that combines anarchism and capitalism into one. Sort of like libertarianism, but with an extra step. The ideal is that you get rid of the government completely. So it shouldn't exist, not even for taxes and not even for the justice system. The belief is that the best society that we should live in is one where we all participate voluntarily. So we'll have social contracts like we do between each other or the institutions, but we don't need laws that tell us what we can and cannot do. And if someone chooses to be a bad person, then society will find a way to either vote them out or physically remove them out. That's what anarcho-capitalists believe. But he also believes in something called the Austrian School of Economics, and here's what that means. The Austrian School of Economics is tied to libertarian kind of thinking, based on the free market to allow the market to do what it does without interfering. So for example, let's say I open up my stock portfolio and I'm like, well, the stock market's gonna go to zero. The Austrian School of Economics says, let it all fail, because a better market will take its place. The Austrian school also believes in a money that goes up over time. It's what's called deflationary. So more that's a money based on a finite amount like gold or Bitcoin, because in relation to it, everything goes down in value. That's why it's called deflationary. So that's what Javier believes is best. Now, for the sake of making this video complete, I want to share with you the other half of economics that people also believe, which is the Keynesian approach. Keynesian, even though it's spelled Keynesian, hard to pronounce, but just Kensington Chapel, boy. The Keynesian School of Economics also likes the free market, but it kind of wants a little intervention from time to time. Keynesian-style economists like the idea of a central bank. They want to have the ability to either grow or shrink the supply of money using what's called fiscal and monetary policy. Also, Keynesian school of thought likes money that goes down in value over time, like the US dollar. It's called inflationary. Why it's called that is because everything goes up in value in relation to it, as opposed to deflationary money, which is the opposite. It's kind of counterintuitive, but that's how it works. Anyway, if you go down this rabbit hole of economics far enough, you'll figure out very soon that human beings are clueless when it comes to money. Like, we are still figuring out how to money. We don't really understand how it works, but different parts of the world are running different kinds of monetary experiments. Those are the two main ones, the Austrian School of Economics and the Keynesian School of Economics. The one I just described was the Keynesian one, and the United States monetary system right now, today, is based on that one. So was Argentina. Now for Argentina, that experiment failed. Peronism plus the Keynesian school of thought of just printing money and giving it away eventually created the Argentina that we know today. And that's also why one of the things Javier Milei wants to do is to end the central bank and dollarize their economy. And here's the thing about that. That is better than having 140% inflation. But because most people don't watch nerdy macroeconomics videos on YouTube because they have better things to do, most people also probably don't realize that to correct the economy, it's gonna come at a huge cost. Remember that printing money is like drinking. You can drink for a long time and have a lot of fun, and you can print a ton of money, but the more you do it, the worse it eventually gets, because the moment that you stop, you have to face the hangover and all the potential organ failures. So to bring the inflation down, the economy first has to experience a lot of pain. Higher unemployment, more job losses, for example, and because a huge portion of their economy is government jobs, that's one of their biggest problems that needs to be solved. Argentina needs a free economy, and you have to get rid of printing money as an option, and that's why they want to get rid of their central bank. But you have to take away the whole drink, which means the subsidies as well, because the government can't just keep on borrowing money to make energy and retirement cheaper. Now that sounds good and like the right thing to do in theory, but in practice, it's so hard because you have to get the rest of your body on board. You have to get all your organs to agree to never take a drink again. And that means convincing all the politicians to agree to all these policies. And you can't just take away the subsidies all at once, because then that's like kicking out a patient who's in the hospital on life support. You can't take away their medicine until you stabilize them first. And that means creating an economy where people can work a job that pays them enough money to where they don't need a subsidy. That's the free market. And creating one right now is a lot harder to do in practice than it is in theory. There also has to be pain for their investors, because inflation can make a market skyrocket, but by removing the ability to add infinite money to a market, that market will eventually come back down. Overall, it's the right step, and if Argentina can dollarize their economy, which some people argue they won't be able to because there's not enough dollars in their reserves, but if they can, overall, that will be a good thing for the US dollar, because that means more global demand. A stronger dollar means overall more purchasing power, which is a good thing for US consumers. I hope you got some value out of that. As always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to grab your free stuff. Links are down below, and then go track them automatically with the spreadsheet link down below in my Patreon. Love you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Love to see you back here on Monday and Friday, sometimes a Wednesday. See you soon. Bye-bye.